Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one of those moments where arrogance meets humility, where a single challenge turns into a life-changing lesson, and where the most powerful people sometimes learn the biggest truths from the most unexpected places. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this incredible story. It was a hot afternoon in the middle of the city, the kind of day where the sunlight reflected off the tall glass buildings and the streets buzzed with noise and movement. Expensive cars rolled past crowded sidewalks, and people rushed from one meeting to another, each person chasing their own ambitions. Among those people was a man named Victor Hale. Victor Hale was a millionaire entrepreneur. Everyone in the business world knew his name. He owned a massive tech company that had grown from a small startup into a corporate giant worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Victor was known for his sharp mind, his ruthless business strategies, and one thing that people whispered about quietly behind his back, his enormous ego. Victor believed one thing above all else, that he was better than everyone else. That he believed his success proved it, and on that afternoon, Victor stepped out of his luxury office building wearing an expensive tailored suit, dark sunglasses, and a confident smile that said he owned the world. Parked at the curb beside him was his pride and joy, an incredibly rare supercar that looked like it belonged on a racetrack rather than a city street. Employees walking by admired it, strangers stopped and stared. Victor loved that. He tossed his keys in the air and caught them, enjoying the attention. Just as he was about to step toward the car, he noticed someone standing near the edge of the sidewalk. It was a young man in worn-out clothes, pushing an old bicycle. The bike looked like it had seen better decades, not just years. The frame was scratched, the paint had faded, and the chain squeaked with every movement. The young man looked tired, like someone who had spent the entire day working under the sun. Victor smirked. To him, the sight was almost amusing. "Hey," Victor called out casually. The young man stopped and looked up. His name was Daniel. Daniel had been delivering packages across the city all day. He worked 2 jobs just to pay rent and help support his younger sister. That old bicycle wasn't just transportation. It was the reason he could keep food on the table. Daniel walked closer, unsure why a millionaire in a designer suit was talking to him. Victor leaned against his car and crossed his arms. "That bike yours?" Victor asked, glancing at it like it was a museum relic. Daniel nodded quietly. "Yeah. It gets the job done." Victor chuckled. "The job done?" he repeated, shaking his head. "That thing looks like it belongs in a scrapyard." A few people nearby turned their heads. Daniel felt the embarrassment rise in his chest, but he kept calm. "It still works," he said. Victor looked at the bike again, then at Daniel. An idea popped into his head. Victor loved challenges. More than that, he loved showing people how superior he was. So he pushed away from the car and said loudly enough for people nearby to hear, "I'll tell you what." Daniel raised an eyebrow. Victor grinned. "My company is yours, if you can outrun me with that junk." For a moment, the street went quiet. People nearby stopped walking. A few office workers stepped closer. "Did he just say his company?" someone whispered. Victor smiled confidently, enjoying the attention. Daniel looked confused. "Outrun you? How?" Victor pointed down the long avenue stretching across the city. "There's a hill about 5 miles from here," he said. "We race there." He gestured to his supercar. "I'll drive." Then he pointed at the old bicycle. "You ride." The crowd started murmuring. Everyone assumed this was a joke. A billionaire racing a delivery guy? It made no sense. Victor leaned closer and said smugly, "If you somehow beat me, the company is yours." Daniel blinked. "That's impossible." Victor shrugged. "Then you have nothing to worry about." Someone in the crowd pulled out a phone to record. Victor loved the spectacle. Daniel looked down at his bicycle. He knew how ridiculous this sounded. But something about Victor's arrogance stirred something inside him. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was frustration from years of struggling. Or maybe it was the way Victor looked at him like he was nothing. Daniel slowly nodded. "All right." The crowd gasped. Victor laughed. "You're serious?" Daniel shrugged. "You said it yourself. I have nothing to worry about." Within minutes, people gathered along the street like it was some kind of spontaneous event. Phones were out, cameras were rolling, and the energy in the air buzzed with excitement. Victor slid into his supercar. The engine roared to life like a wild animal waking up. Daniel climbed onto his old bicycle. The chain creaked, someone in the crowd shouted, "Ready." Victor revved the engine loudly. Daniel tightened his grip on the handlebars. 3, 2, 1. Victor's car exploded forward like a rocket. The crowd cheered as the supercar vanished down the road. Daniel began pedaling, slowly at first, then faster. People laughed, some shook their heads, but Daniel didn't look back. What no one knew was something Victor didn't bother to think about. Victor had spent his entire life chasing wealth. Daniel had spent his entire life riding that bicycle, through traffic, through narrow alleys, across broken roads, across hills that he knew the city like a map in his mind. Victor sped down the main road, confident the race was already won. He checked the mirror and laughed. No bicycle in sight. Of course not. He pushed the accelerator harder, but Victor didn't know something else. Daniel wasn't following the main road. He turned sharply into a narrow side street that cars rarely used, then another. He pedaled harder, his legs burned, sweat ran down his face. But he kept going. He crossed shortcuts only cyclists knew, between markets, through alleyways, across a small park path. Meanwhile, Victor hit heavy traffic 3 miles down the road. Cars crawled bumper to bumper. He slammed the steering wheel in frustration. What the? He looked ahead. A construction zone. 1 lane closed, traffic barely moving. Victor cursed under his breath. His powerful supercar meant nothing if it couldn't move. He looked around desperately. Then, in the distance, something unbelievable appeared. A bicycle. An old, squeaky bicycle. Daniel rode past the traffic line using the bike lane beside the road. Victor stared in disbelief. That's impossible. Daniel didn't even look at him. He kept pedaling. Minutes later, Daniel reached the hill first. He stopped at the top, breathing heavily, heart pounding. A small group of people from the crowd who followed the race arrived shortly after. Their jaws dropped. He actually did it. Victor's car finally arrived 10 minutes later. Victor stepped out slowly. For the first time in years, he looked stunned. He stared at Daniel. The young man standing beside a rusty bicycle had just beaten a millionaire driving one of the fastest cars in the world. Victor looked around. Cameras were everywhere. People were whispering. He realized something important. He had made a promise. Victor walked toward Daniel. Daniel expected excuses or anger. Instead, Victor did something no one expected. He laughed, not mockingly, but genuinely. "Kid," he said, shaking his head, "I've spent my whole life believing money could solve everything." He looked at the bicycle. "And you just proved me wrong." Daniel stayed quiet. Victor looked at the city skyline behind them, then back at Daniel. "You won the race." The crowd held their breath. Victor continued, "And while I'm not handing over $100 million company," a few people groaned, but Victor raised a finger, "I do keep my promises." He pulled a card from his pocket. "This is my personal number." Daniel hesitated before taking it. Victor said, "Starting tomorrow, you're not delivering packages anymore." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Victor smiled. "You're working with me." The crowd went silent again. Victor continued, "A guy who knows the city that well, who doesn't quit, who can outthink a millionaire with nothing but a bicycle." He shook his head in admiration. "That's the kind of person I want in my company." Daniel stared at the card. His life had just changed in a way he never expected. Victor climbed back into his car but paused before closing the door. "Oh, and Daniel?" Daniel looked up. Victor smirked slightly. "Next time, I'm bringing a bicycle." The crowd burst into laughter, and that moment, the race between arrogance and determination, spread across the internet within hours. Millions watched the video, but what they really saw wasn't a race. They saw something bigger. They saw proof that determination can beat advantage, that experience can beat power, and that sometimes the people who look like they have the least, are the ones who can surprise the world the most. Daniel eventually joined Victor's company and helped redesign their city logistics system using the shortcuts and knowledge he had gained from years on the streets. Within 2 years, the company became even more successful, but Victor never forgot that day, the day a rusty bicycle outran a supercar, the day a millionaire learned that speed isn't always about horsepower, sometimes, it's about heart. And that's the story for today. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that success doesn't always come from power or money, it comes from determination, creativity, and never underestimating someone just because they started with less. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.